for people that get all their information from YouTube and from RFK, seed oils are bad for you. And fish oils and things like avocado oil and olive oil and butter, these things are good for you, right?
It's a little more complicated than that, but
it is a little bit more complicated, but if you want to break it down, make it binary, that's basically how most people understand it.
So I think the main confusion point is so I'm holding up, I don't know if people can see a little diagram here of fatty acids. There's saturated and unsaturated. We can talk about saturated separately, a very complex group in and of itself. Within unsaturated, there's mono unsaturated, one double bond, or poly unsaturated. Within poly unsaturated, there's omega-3, so like fatty fish, fish oil, and then there's omega-6. And this omega-6 more or less synonymous with linoleic acid just because of the proportions that are consumed. The way I want to define seed oils and stick to these terms as best we can, because I think this, if nothing else, is the main confusion point. If omega-6 rich foods are like highly refined and processed to get the oil that is heated and has additives added to it, that is the highly industrialized seed oil. True. And I think one of the big issues that arises is conflating omega-6 and seed oil. So let's start, because I think this is where we're going to have the biggest disagreement about omega-6. So the physiologic impacts of omega-6 specifically, and then we'll talk about processing.
Well, we can talk about relative amounts because I think this is an interesting point. So what Nick is saying, so just to back to what we were just saying, so the average American consumes 5 tablespoons of seed oils per day. The most commonly consumed seed oil is soybean, perhaps followed by canola. Soybean is approximately 50%, give or take, linoleic acid.
And where are they getting all of this from?
It could be it's probably French fries, it's in breads, it's in salad dressings. So the majority of seed oils people are consuming are heated. That's an important point also.
Just basic processed foods.
Processed foods. Right. And so, and I think a lot of it is French fries, a lot of it is chips, right? Those oils are boiled and heated. So there's even nuance in the seed oil conversation that goes deeper, right? You can have a seed oil, which, as Nick correctly points out, is industrially refined, bleached, and deodorized oil, soybean oil, canola oil, peanut oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil. It's sitting on the shelf in a grocery store in a plastic container that can leach antimony into the oil. It's a transparent plastic container, so that is a fragile oil by nature of being polyunsaturated that is being exposed to light and oxygen for months at a time. And then you take those oils, and most of those oils that we consume today are then heated. Right? You're either frying with them in a pan or you're deep frying with them. So there are levels to perhaps the potential harm of these oils. As you heat an unstable oil, it becomes more problematic, more inflammatory mediators are generated. So we can talk about heated seed oils, we can talk about unheated seed oils, and as Nick is pointing out, we should differentiate that from not even processed sources of omega-6, things like walnuts, right? That walnuts contain moderate amounts of omega-6. They also contain moderate amounts of omega-3. But what I wanted to point out here is that, so let's just say corn. Corn oil is another commonly consumed oil, seed oil, industrially refined, bleached, and deodorized oil in our diet today. Again, chips, cakes, cookies, packaged foods. You look at labels, they're everywhere. French fries, obviously. It's in bread at all the fast food restaurants. Processed foods.
Yeah.
In order to get 5 tablespoons of corn oil, you would have to eat 60 ears of corn, right? Something that humans would never have done historically. 5 tablespoons of soybean oil is 2.5 pounds plus of soybeans. 5 tablespoons of peanut oil, something the same. You can look at these amounts. It's just just to say, like, a walnut, the amount of linoleic acid in a walnut pales in comparison to a tablespoon of, walnut oil is not really a seed oil because it's so unstable. It has so much omega-3, people never use walnut oil. It gets rancid so fast. But like a soybean is not the same as a tablespoon of soybean oil, right? A tablespoon of soybean oil is the equivalent of, hundreds of soybeans.
Sure.
And that's not even the best example. You have 2.5 plus pounds of soybeans to get 5 tablespoons of oil. These are evolutionarily, and again, I'm sort of stacking the deck in my favor. But I'm trying to say this as just in an unbiased way as possible. These are evolutionarily difficult amounts of oils to obtain from the actual parent foods.
Right.
So that's interesting. So we have those 3 differentiators. We're talking about omega-6 linoleic acid occurs in most unprocessed foods that you or I eat today. There is omega-6 linoleic acid in a grass-fed steak. It's a small amount, right? It's perhaps 1%. 1% of the fat in a steak is linoleic acid. 50% of the fat in soybean oil is linoleic acid. So you see there's a spectrum, right? An egg yolk contains linoleic acid.
Right.
So there's a difference between saying linoleic acid is, per se harmful, or is there a dose, or is there a form factor here as well? So yeah, and we can differentiate all those things, but that's just something I wanted to differentiate for people. Like historically, our consumption of linoleic acid today is 10x, 1,000% higher than it ever has been historically, because of our consumption of seed oils.
Do we know when our consumption, this 5 tablespoons per day, started? Like when did this start, and like how has it grown?
The first seed oil was introduced in 1911. Procter & Gamble made Crisco, right? So 1900, there were essentially 99% of the fat we ate was animal fat in 1900. And just to give context, again, record keeping not the same, but the heart attack wasn't even a thing. There was no diagnosis of heart attack in 1900.
Wow, that's
Humans
crazy.
didn't have like chest pain. Like that, this clinical syndrome is not defined until much later. Yeah, so
holy shit, global production of is vegetable oil the same thing?
Yeah, vegetable oil is the euphemism, right? So seed oil is
look, it shows all of them: palm, soybean, canola.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
dude.
1911 is Crisco, and then more and more become a part of it. There's interesting history from Procter & Gamble and the American Medical Association that I can mention because we're on the topic. So the American Medical Association, I think, was started in the 1850s, but it didn't really rise to prominence until the mid-1900s. And part of that was a major grant from Procter & Gamble to the AMA. So there's a lot of speculation. Again, it's just purely speculation, but Procter & Gamble makes Crisco. Procter & Gamble was really behind the popularization of, at that time, hydrogenated seed oils into the public sphere in place of butter and lard, right? Because animal fats, 1900, 99% of what we eat is animal fat. And then Procter & Gamble makes Crisco. They say it's cheaper, it's healthier, it's white, it's not going to raise your LDL. As we begin to understand lipoproteins, we can talk about saturated fats versus monounsaturated and poly and their effect on ApoB and LDL. In 1939, I think, give or take, Procter & Gamble makes the equivalent today of a $100,000 donation to the American Medical Association for their sort of radio show. And then the American Medical Association begins to sort of get more on this polyunsaturated fat bandwagon. You can find ads from, I would say, the 1950s and 60s of, these are incredible ads. I think they're from maybe Mazola corn oil, but you can see this becoming a part of the zeitgeist. And there's a great ad, maybe you can find it, Steve. It's like Denise or whoever it is, polyunsaturated her family tonight. So they're talking about cooking with this corn oil.
What?
There are these crazy ads. Yeah, so like anyway, they become a part of the conversation and the cultural milieu over the last, let's say, 100 years, give or take, starting in 1911. Before that, essentially, cottonseed oil was made in the 1860s, but not used in food until 1911. Previously, most people know this, but previously seed oils were used for lamp oils and for engine oils. And they were used in World War II on submarines and ships because they retain their slipperiness when they're wet.